Democratic Congressman Adam Smith of Washington. He's the ranking member of the Armed Services Committee. Congressman, good to see you. Thank you. I want to touch on a couple other things that are going on. First of all, on again, off again, not happening, deal with Ukraine and Russia. Where do we stand right now?
Look, Trump has consistently undermined Ukraine in the year that he's been in office, and it's a real missed opportunity because Russia's vulnerable right now. In fact, one of the worst things that Trump has done in this whole thing is how he keeps saying that Russia's winning, Ukraine has no cards, you basically have no choice but to come to some sort of terms. Russia has been taking on appalling casualties, losing all manner of equipment, not making up much ground, and their economy's in the toilet. If we could stand strong with Ukraine, that would force Putin to cut a deal. Instead, the Trump administration consistently undermines Ukraine and props up Putin with their rhetoric, which makes peace all the more difficult. So that's the biggest thing that needs to change, is we need to get behind Ukraine and stand with our allies who are standing up for Ukraine.
Yeah, it's hard to tell where Donald Trump is on these things, though, because he seems to lurch and backtrack on a consistent basis. We don't really seem to have a consistent U.S. government policy on how this should go and how this should end.
Yeah, part of it. I mean, Trump's got a whole bunch of different interests here. To begin with, he doesn't like Ukraine because Zelensky wouldn't dig up dirt on Biden for him. He likes Putin because Putin is a strong man, which is something that Trump has shown an affinity for. So he's caught in that. But at the same time, and this is an argument I've been making for a long time, Trump doesn't want to be seen as the guy who lost Ukraine. It would be embarrassing for him. So we have to keep putting pressure on him in that regard to get him to overcome those other things. Then, of course, there's the whole J.D. Vance, anti-Europe sort of pro-Putin take on how we should be handling cultural issues. All of that factors in. But at the end of the day, we need to stand up for a sovereign democratic Ukraine and help them win this fight that they've been doing such an effective job of for the last almost 4 years now.
I keep asking you this next question about Venezuela, so you must think I'm a bit thick, but I'm still not clear on what our policy is with Venezuela and what the end game looks like. There is talk that Nicolas Maduro, who is widely regarded to not be a legitimate leader of Venezuela, is prepared to talk to the United States about something. What do you make of what's going on in Venezuela?
Well, I think the end game for Trump is to drive Maduro out of power. And to get a more friendly government in place in Venezuela. But the biggest thing that's going on in Venezuela goes beyond Venezuela. This is Trump's worldview. This is his 21st century Monroe doctrine, that the U.S. should be able to dominate the Western Hemisphere. It's about might makes right in his belief that the U.S. ought to be in control of everything. Because certainly we've seen what's happening in Venezuela, but there's been the threats to take Greenland by force, to invade Panama, to reassert control of the canal, to annex Canada. That's the ideology. And by the way, this ties back into Ukraine, because that's the other thing. With Trump's worldview that might makes right, he's got sympathy for Putin. Putin's got his sphere of influence. We got our sphere of influence. That's all fine, except that it's
and that was sort of outlined in the national security strategy, right? That this is our sphere of influence. We control this. Nobody else should be involved in the Western Hemisphere, and not really all that concerned about that side of things.
And I wish people could understand that for all the flaws in what the United States has done since the end of World War II, it also introduced more of a rules-based international order than the world had ever seen before. It worked. We became the most prosperous country in the history of the world, and by and large enjoyed 80 years of relative peace compared to other great powers. Now Trump wants to chuck that all over the side in favor of might makes right, a U.S. domination, turning over chunks to Russia. Who knows what his plans are for China? Meanwhile, he keeps dragging us into all manner of different conflicts, and in Venezuela and Iran. So it is not a solid, well-thought-out foreign policy. It will make the U.S. weaker and less safe.
And there are lots of people who would say Maduro's not a good leader, and they'd like to see someone else. There are very few people who think we should be in an armed conflict with Venezuela. But putting all of the policy considerations aside, the way they are executing this war, they continue to say that these are legitimate targets, these boats that they keep blowing up. Most lawyers and international rights experts say that's just not true.
Yeah, no, there's certainly not. I mean, look, there is no imminent threat to lives in the U.S. from boats that are shipping cocaine, primarily, by the way, to West Africa and Europe, not even to the U.S. So I think that's really just a pretext. I mean, you go back to the pardons that Trump has given to drug dealers like the former president of Honduras and the former Silk Road guy, forgetting his name, who laundered billions of dollars in drug money, and then Trump pardoned him. It doesn't seem to be terribly focused on dealing with the drug problem in America. It's about asserting U.S. dominance in the region. And that's why the policy doesn't seem to make sense, and also why it's clearly not legal, not under international law, not under U.S. law. Now, Trump, in a whole number of different areas, has ignored the law, again, because he wants to assert executive power on the tariffs, on sending U.S. troops into U.S. cities, on a whole host of issues. So part of this also is, again, the unitary executive. Trump wants to be able to do whatever he wants to do, including blow up boats in the Caribbean.
Congressman, good to see you as always. Thank you for making us smarter about these things. Congressman Adam Smith. All right, coming up, Donald Trump's Epstein trouble will likely get worse when Congress returns next week. We'll talk about that.